Are alive here with Artist to Art, a photographer's portrait. So now we get started. We have Roff here. He does awesome stuff. So that's what's happening. Artist to Art, a photographer's portrait. I'm Aaron Jack. And this is Artist Art. And here we go with Roff. We're going alive. We're alive. Hey, Zen. Hey!
Good.
We got this.
I was afraid it was going to go blank again.
We're perfect. We're perfect.
Fantastic. Great. Nice
Here
to
we
meet you.
are. Here we are. We've made it. Welcome, everybody. So, hey, Vivian. So, yes, way to be alive, says Vivian. Thank you. So, Roff, I guess this is your first time on live?
It certainly is. Yes.
Wow. Well, welcome. So, the way that it works is
Okay.
you hang out. I can show you. Wait, I don't have your photos on this one. So, I will have to show them on my phone and put them on here because I had to just switch.
Of course.
We're gonna figure it out. I mean, normally it on my screen, but I'm gonna see if this works. If this works, then this is how we're gonna do it. I'm gonna just show
Okay.
the phone, and then, well, we'll
It works.
play by ear.
Well, you stop and think we're talking across the Atlantic Ocean for free, face to face.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's
So,
incredible.
yeah.
And thank you so much for being a part of this whole series on photographers and having and being a part of my Showfield's creation curation project.
It's a real privilege. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted.
Yeah, I'm just so excited. You have amazing work, and I'm excited to get into it. So the way it works is people comment at the bottom of the screen. They can ask questions. They can
Good.
here with us, and you can say hi. You can respond. We can just be here in this conversation
Okay.
while I look at the comments. So feel free to. Hey, Luna. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. So everybody feel free to write, ask questions, be here with us as we look through work, have a conversation, be alive here because that's all we've got.
Okay. Great.
All right, I think I've gone over the rules here. All right, let's check out some of your work. Maybe
Okay.
we'll start off with some of the work that you've been doing lately or this series here.
Yes. Um, I have been obviously grounded by COVID, as everybody else has, and I've been doing travels at home, you might say, going out on my bicycle and shooting the English landscapes, and as though they were travel stories, looking at my neighborhood through a travel photographer's eyes. I've also been kind of exploring the idea of isolation as well, which was what that image was about. I'm quite a fan of Edward Hopper, and I love the way he captured isolation, but I think in a positive sense. So many people say that his paintings are people of sad people. I don't think they're sad at all. I think they're isolated, they're alone, they're pensive, they are self-contained. And I think that that's kind of a good theme for these days, where we are. Isolation is the motif of today, but it doesn't mean we have to be sad. It doesn't mean we have to be melancholy, perhaps a bit pensive. What's the future hold? But there's nothing bad with isolation, nothing bad with solitude. Again, I've done a lot of travel in very remote places. 20 years ago, I spent 9 months cycling through Outback, Australia. 10,000 miles, totally on my own. This was the days before there were phones. There was no GPS. No one knew where I was. I was camped out sometimes hundreds of miles from anybody in the desert and loved it. absolutely loved it. Um, and I still am very, very. I've spent a lot of time in Antarctica. As again, I've sent you some images of that as well. I like solitude. I like positive solitude. It's not melancholy. And I guess Edward Hopper's paintings speak to me, and it's kind of fun when I see a chance that I can kind of do my own Edward Hopper. And when I saw that on the Edwardian um, uh, beach shelter on the old seafront at Bexhill-on-Sea the other day, I just thought, hey, here's an Edward Hopper in the making. I get to do it. So I had my little chance at that, and was quite pleased with the result. All of my work on these things it's all done on my own. I carry everything on my bicycle. I shoot everything is totally me, which is a lot harder than people would realize to do. You have to visualize the shot, and then you have to have this obsession with detail. You wouldn't believe how many takes sometimes, because I'm shooting in shifting light in a totally uncontrolled environment. I'm looking through the viewfinder, seeing what I want to be there, but then I have to take into account the fall of light and shadow, the angles of a bicycle. There's so many things. Get the body language right. You have to have the bicycle language right. You have to be going slow. This is really low light. And nothing's worse than you have everything right, but the bicycle is visibly wobbling. That doesn't work. So you have to, you have to, direct, produce, act, the whole thing entirely on your own. It's a wonderful challenge, but there are mornings when I turn the sky. I look when I come back and see the pictures later. People say, "Oh, what peacefulness you must be enjoying out there." And I'm thinking, if you could hear the language that was going out, it was turning the Sussex air blue. But that's part of the artifice and part of the there's acting going on as well. It's a tricky thing, but very rewarding.
Wow. So it's
It's the most challenging photography I've ever done.
what?
It's the
Challenging?
most challenging photography I've ever done. Because I'll miss shots, and I'll think, if I was shooting someone else doing this, I wouldn't have missed that. Because you can just, I've gone out and shot stuff. In the winter, I've gone out at 4 o'clock in the morning so I can be somewhere when the sun rises 2 hours away. It's let's say 22 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm freezing when I get there. I get the shot. I think I get the shot. I come home, I look at it, and I've been known to look at it and think that the camera needed to be tilted down about 4 degrees. And I have gone back the next day to do that shot over again. It's that kind of obsession, which drives me nuts. But in the summer, our sunrises here. I'm in England at 51 degrees north latitude. Our sunrise is at 4:45 in the morning in June, which means I leave here at 3 o'clock to get somewhere to be where I want to be 20 minutes before the sunrise, to set up, to do my rehearsal shots, and all this to come back and, maybe get one or two frames that work. It's challenging.
Wow.
But yeah.
Well, so you've been doing this for a while, this series, right?
I have, yes. I started it last year in a I'm enthusiastic way, but I really began when COVID came. Yes, that was the other day. The channel was as smooth. It's like a lake. It was eerie, and I thought I really want this shot. And a very nice mackerel fisherman got out of the way, let me have the jetty, so I could take that shot. And then I wished him good luck with the fishing, and he wished me a good day, and that was that. But since COVID, it's been a real passion. It's been like my job. I've treated it like a job. where, I mean, I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and, I might, by 11 o'clock, I am zonked. But, I put in 8 hours to get these images. And so it's been a real passion. And like I said, I got home, I shot a Panama Hat story literally just before lockdown. I arrived hours before everything locked down, having spent several weeks in Ecuador shooting the Panama Hats. And that was the last time I've traveled. And so this has been my travel as well as my
That's
pseudo
amazing.
work.
You've been able to find travel at home. I think that's incredible for like to see it differently.
And it's really been an eye opener. I live in what is, every time you see my town mentioned in print, it's always the faded seaside town of Hastings, faded seaside town of St. Leonard's, these old seaside towns, which, and people kind of forget, but there's some stunning stuff around here. You travel around all of the shots. I mean, I've got about 300, I think now on, or good up to that on my Instagram posts. All of them were shot within a 10-mile radius of where I live in this faded little town. Most of them were shot within a 5-mile radius. There is so much, to see in our neighborhoods if we go out. And I think that has taught me, and I think it might be a good lesson for what the future holds, because I don't think we're going to be traveling quite as carefree and as we have been. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. Get on a bicycle, ding your camera, go out, take a look. There's some wonderful stuff. People have commented and said to me, "Oh, you live in such a gorgeous neck of the woods. I could never get that kind of stuff here." I'm thinking, everyone describes this place as a faded old, deprived area. Look around. I'm positive. I could go wherever. Give me a bicycle, give me a camera, a few days to familiarize myself, and I'll bet you can find some lovely stuff anywhere you are. Just go out there with your eyes open. And I think one way or another, this will have taught me a lot of things about photography that will be useful later. Just see things with new eyes. What then people call it the beginner. And the real trick is to see your neighborhood that way, because you're so used to seeing it. And the funny thing is, even after months, I mean, the other day, I just saw a new curve on the road in a new way that I hadn't seen before. I mean, actually, it was on the seafront promenade at Bexhill-on-Sea, looking back towards my town. The sun was coming up. It was like I'd never seen it before. I jumped off, set up the tripod, and I got really quite a nice shot. It's what I've got on my yesterday's post. I've been by that hundreds of times and just hadn't seen it before. And now that I've seen it, every time I go by, that's a nice spot. And it's just another spot on the promenade. Everyone walks by it every day. And there's so much to see, so much to appreciate right within our neighborhoods. And maybe that'll be something that can come out of this COVID thing. People, you don't really need to get on a jet and travel. You can find adventure, travel, the romance of difference 10 miles from home. Easy. Just look. It's there. So, yeah.
The romantic difference. That's an interesting. It's so fascinating because it's like coming from you were just in Ecuador like
Yeah.
just before this hit, and that's I'm a fan of travel myself, but also like as this was hitting since last September, I've been really focusing on also like what's in my neighborhood. Um, and it's a really interesting thing to try to see things in a new way, or or having a project even to focus on that and
Yeah.
having to pass like what's already.
Well, yeah, because I'm sure you will have found, I'm no doubt, because you start getting curious, and you see some building, or you see a facade, or you see a little plaque that says something about something you never heard of. So you start researching stuff and learning things, and you find stuff that you've been going by every day, and it's quite interesting. I mean, there's a building on the seafront. It looks kind of cool. It's an Art Deco-y kind of building on our seafront. You see it, and it's okay. It's a nice Art Deco building, but I began, why? What's this building all about? And I find out, of course, it was built in the 30s, which I'd guessed anyway. But it was built to look like, and once when I read it was built to look like the Queen Mary at anchor. It was built to look like an old ocean liner. Now, once I've seen that, I can't not see it. It's, I can't unsee it. Now I see the Queen Mary sitting there. It's a type of architecture called streamlined moderne, which I didn't know about. It's a cousin of Art Deco, and I've started researching it. But all this has just come about because I've been looking. And, you find, just small details that I do a lot of shooting on a marsh road. I ride across these old marshes. And I discovered that, these were smugglers' grounds back in the day. A couple of hundred years ago, the road I was on was much marshier. The coast was abandoned, and there were pitched battles between revenue men and smugglers on this little road that I had no idea. But when you start getting interested in things, you start looking up and looking, finding out more and more things. This little road I go over this hill into Beck Hill, an ordinary little hill, meaningless. But and I just saw a little sign one day, a little commemorative sign, and I found out that was where motor racing got its start. And there were actually attempts at the land speed record using this little hill. Seriously, a Frenchman came to try to set the land speed record there in about 1901 or 03 or something like that, with these preposterous little automobiles that you'd never want to ride in at any kind of speed. But they were going, trying to do like 85, 90, 100 miles an hour on these little, and they would actually I thought maybe they used the hill to get a bit of speed. They actually used that as a braking thing. They would ride up and hope the hill would stop them as they got to the top of it. And it's, this is just a little hill that I ride over on my bicycle in the mornings that I had no idea about. And you start learning, my typical daily ride takes me through 2,000 years of British history, most of which I had no idea about. And I've learned, and it's small chapters of history. I mean, where I turn around is where William the Conqueror landed with his men. He didn't land there's the Battle of Hastings, which didn't take place at Hastings at all. It took place 4 miles inland, but I know that now. And he landed his men at Pevensey in the marshes, which is where I cross every day. And I think of that, in his day, where the road I'm riding on was underwater. And you can see the landscape. And as Hemingway once said, to get to know a country's landscapes, the contours of a landscape, go on a bicycle. And he's quite right. And I'm riding along these flats and realizing where I'm riding now is underwater in William's days. By the 18th century, it was marshy and you had the smugglers coming in. But in his day, this was an inlet. And the little village where I turn around was an island. And there's an Iron Age, ruins of an Iron Age fort there. There were ruins in his day. That's where he marshaled his men. And, I've ridden on the path of his march to battle. And, these are just little things that you find. I'm fortunate that I do have this kind of history nearby. I mean, that's true. But
right.
I'm learning the little details of things.
Of that history.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And, you get a new vision of the history, and you can see the layers. I'm riding on this road, which was the Smuggler's Road, which before that was a marsh, which before that was where William landed with his men. But the same road was a racing track from the 1900s. It's seeing new things every day.
Wow. So really, like through your bike, you're looking at these layers of history.
Yeah.
like time almost.
Yes. It's, and another thing with doing this cycling thing, bicycles, I mean, I think it's the first form of transport any of us ever had as kids, you know, and it's an emblem of freedom. Yes, that's along, that's really close to where the land speed record is being set, by the way. I am not setting the speed record there by any stretch of the imagination. But, it's something artists have employed bicycles in their paintings for centuries, for as long as the bicycle's been around, since 1885 when the bicycle was invented. But for photographers, it's much harder. I mean, unless you're going out doing what I'm doing, you can't put a bicycle in the scenery. I mean, the artists can paint. Yorker has had bicycles on their covers more than 100 times over the years. I mean, it's a natural emblem for freedom, for humans treading lightly, for a kind of a jaunty expectancy. But most photography of cycling concerns racing, or someone on someone taking a picture of an exotic expedition somewhere in Tajikistan, But where a New Yorker artist can create a little landscape and put a bicycle, kind of a lyrical little bicycle in this landscape to lighten the mood. It's hard to do that with photography unless you actually go out trying to do it. And my work, I don't like I'm the cyclist in the frame, but I'm a most reluctant model. As a journalist, I always like to say that I had the perfect face for radio and the ultimate voice. I like to be out of the frame, but because needs must, I have to be my own model. But I try to anonymize myself as much as possible so that the cyclist you see in these pictures should be considered a cyclist. Yes, that's a cyclist. It's me, but that is not a selfie. Yes, that was what I really wanted to do. That's the King George V Coronation Pavilion. It's in the seafront at Bexhill. And I'd often see the sunrise and the moonset at the same time. So hard to try to get a picture of both. And so I have the implied sunrise with the moonset and the sense of completing a ride. I'd already ridden about 30 miles that day, and it was on my way home. And just stopped to capture the sunrise and the moonset. It's, again, something that it's an image that I'd had in my mind, and you sort of have to wait. With this work, I I keep track of the moonsets, phases of the tide, sunrise times, seasons. So much planning goes into these shots. They look spontaneous, but believe me, they're not. There's, I know where I'm going to be and when I'm going to be there. And, I check the weather forecasts, I say phases of the moon, the tides, and then I do a lot of scouting when I'm not actually going out shooting. If the weather is bad, I'll go out scouting and check how are the seasons progressing. When's the sun going to come over this particular? It's a lot of work. In a way, I'm going to be sad when actual real work comes back because I'm going to have to give up my full-time avocation to go back and do real stuff. But
I just asked that question. Like, I think it's like kind of a question for a lot of people. It's like, do we have to, if we like what we're doing now, do we really have to go back to what we were doing before?
Well, I'm trying to find some way to make this work because I would love to keep doing. I mean, I've started writing a novel and a children's book as well, and I've been working on a children's book for a while. I've got a little character. Children's literature is brand new for me, so I'm trying to get it right. But so I'm trying to find some way maybe to escape the magazine world and be able to just stay home, do this kind of stuff. I've traveled all my career. I've been, well, I don't keep track of the countries, but over 100, and I've been on every continent. Um, and I'm finding myself getting more of a sense of travel, more, but going out on my bicycle in the morning. I'm fine not to have a passport, I think. I'm fine to just stay home. Wherever I can get on my bicycle is kind of good enough for me these days. I'm thinking, hey, I'd like to keep doing this. Hopefully, hopefully.
That's beautiful to find a new sense of like meaningfulness, it seems.
Yeah, it is nice because a lot of people, because I have traveled a lot, people say, well, where would you really like to go? Well, I'm kind of happy going over to Bexhill. I don't mind riding up, going up into the wheel. That's kind of nice. I'm happy with that. I can go over to Winchelsea some morning. And it seems funny for me to be saying that because I was always wanted I wanted to go everywhere. And I think not being able to travel and being forced to look at what's around and look at things on a village scale. When you're on a bicycle, miles take on different meanings. I mean, there's no anonymous miles on them. You get on a plane and you got 5,000 totally anonymous miles. The view looks just the same. Doesn't matter where you're going. You get on a bicycle, not a single mile is anonymous. They're all different. They're all meaningful. 12 miles becomes a distance to reckon with. 80 miles might be a full day's ride, depending on wind, weather, everything else. And so you start looking at life on the village scale again. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's there's a lot to be seen close by. I'm not really all that keen on getting on a plane anymore. I'm actually finding ways that I suggest to my editor now stories that I can do for the kitchen table. I still contribute to National Geographic. Um, Stories basically that I can do here, do via, I did a history of cycling for Geographic because the original bicycle boom in the 1890s actually shaped a lot of the modern world. People don't realize that the bicycle begat the car, it begat the plane, it begat the ball bearing industry, it begat a whole lot of things. It really shaped our modern world. And I did a story about that for Geographic. I did another story about isolation in Antarctica and how the early explorers coped with it. Again, that was a story I could do for my kitchen table. I've traveled all over Antarctica, so and I used to lecture. I've written books on Antarctica, and so
How
but
did
yeah, go on.
how
Yeah.
did they cope with living in isolation in Antarctica?
Well, I think in their case, they're a pre-selected group. You don't go down to Antarctica if your big deal is the party scene in Manhattan. That's it's a pre-selected group. But most of the people that go down there are content. They're content with themselves, with their own solitude. And there's a certain there's I think it's a pre-selected group basically. Some of them coped better than others, but the ones that didn't do well were the ones that ended up there accidentally. Ship's crews that expected to be coming home for Christmas and found they were going to be there for 3 years, which happened in some of the earlier expeditions. Some of Shackleton's men expected to be dropping off Shackleton and going back home. And they were down there for 2 years on an ice floe. They did rather well, but Shackleton was a superb leader. It's the Antarctic history is a fascinating thing, and as I say, I've spent a fair bit of time down there since I first went there 30 years ago, and it was unusual to go there. but everyone, tourists go there all the time now. It was very unusual 30 years ago.
Where's unusual for people to go now?
Pardon me?
Where's unusual for people to go now?
I don't, every time I think of some place that seems really exotic, I look and I see that it's complete. I mean, I spent a few weeks about 20 years ago, a bit more than that, when Zanzibar first became available. It was closed off for years. And it opened up and I went down there with my bicycle. And I spent, I don't know, I guess about 3 weeks touring around Zanzibar and Pemba, which is a neighboring island. And I have some lovely memories. In fact, one memory in particular, I cycled to the north end of the island of Zanzibar and slept on a hammock between these trees. And I woke at night to this fabulous moonrise over the Indian Ocean. And then I woke again the next morning to the sounds of singing. The local fishermen are putting out to sea in their dhows. And it was the most magical, and they were just singing to themselves. And I was like, it was lovely. And I've not been back, but I understand there's a big resort sitting right on that beach where I slept in a hammock. I've got no desire to go back there at all. I don't know where it's cool to go anymore. Every time I think of someplace, I just go, all I do is look on Instagram and you can find, 80,000 shots of it. And, I think the journeys we make today, the only interesting journeys are the ones we make within ourselves. And I think those can be accomplished. I don't think you need the theater of a faraway place. I think you can find interesting stuff. When I first got back into cycling as an adult, I was a journalist in Melbourne, early 90s, about 1990, I think it was. And I was taking a tram into work every morning. I lived in a little bayside suburb called Elstonwick. Go into work at the age. And there was a tram driver's strike. I couldn't get into work. So I remembered I had this old touring bike from days when I dreamed of riding the Silk Road, and of course never did. Went and got a job instead. And I thought, well, I'll just drag this thing out and just see how it works. And I thought it'd be just kind of a lark, And the first day I rode in was terrifying. I was coming up the main step, all this traffic. But at the same time, it was exciting. It was exhilarating. All day I was at work, kind of half dreading and half looking forward to the ride home. And I came in the next day. And the tram drivers went back after a couple of days. But I didn't. And I started seeing my city. I've been covering Melbourne as a journalist for several years. And I realized I didn't even begin to know that city. And I started, I ended up leaving for work really ridiculously early so I could spend 2 hours going into work, going to new neighborhoods, exploring different streets. It just opened up, the city just became brand new. And, and instead of being a dull old Melbourne, really exciting Melbourne, full of loads of interesting neighborhoods, little vignettes, and you get to know them. It's just, I think that there's some wonderful journeys we could make really close to home and still get a real sense of travel, of chance of difference, of discovery. Who needs to go for 12 hours in a plane with a mask, sipping water? Just get on a bike, go out and explore the hood.
I think it's a very special thing to learn how to explore the world in such a way to explore within ourselves and to explore the world around us. How do you feel other people could, because I know not all cyclists have that point of view. So, and I know, like, I personally enjoy that view myself. A lot of times, it comes in waves, but but how to maybe help others to maybe have a sense of what that could be, or how to even start that journey for themselves.
It is hard. I think in one sense, people had at least a good opportunity over here. I don't know how things work in America. There's different states. Over here, there was a big lockdown, and traffic just fell off to zilch. And people, loads of people got on their bicycles and went out. And a lot of people, because they felt, I think that's a big thing with cycling. People don't feel safe. But in this instance, you could go out, there was very little traffic, and if there's no traffic and you're feeling safe, yes, you can start to look around. And I think for a lot of people, you touch base with your childhood again, because this is that was our first recollection of freedom and travel for most people. And I think we touch base with that again. If you can get that kind of sense of safety and security, then you can. But if you're riding out into traffic, I mean, I've got a pretty robust attitude towards traffic, but I don't like it. I mean, I'm certainly not. By the time I come home, 7 o'clock in the morning, I've been out for hours, but I'm home at 7. There's traffic on the roads, and I'm not stopping to look around and see pretty things at this point. I'm focused on what's getting myself back in one piece. So I think, in one sense, you have to find a good quiet time to ride. Go out before dawn. It's worth getting up early. And, in the summer in particular. I mean, I've got really good lights, so I can go out in the winter. But a lot of people aren't going to spend that kind of money for lights. But, or go out on Sunday mornings. Find a, but then you don't have to be on a bike either. Walking. You can explore on foot. I mean, there's loads of, I like bicycles because you have that sense of aerial liberation and an ability to cover, I can go out in the morning and cover 60 miles and come back for breakfast. And I've seen so much that, which you couldn't do on foot. But, again, on foot has some, there are places where I'll hop off the bike because I'm going too fast and I'll walk because I just, I want to see something or, but yeah, I wish I could take people out and show them. I guess that's, because the stuff is there. And, I think that with cycling in particular, there needs to be some kind of changes so people can do it and feel safe, comfortable doing it. And I think if you get that feeling of comfort and the excitement of so you go out for maybe 5-10 miles. That's wonderful. It's farther than you can walk and farther than you'd like to walk. And you see, a 10 miles slice of countryside or city side. I mean, there's lots to see in the city. Early on a Sunday morning, different streets, a whole bunch of little wonderful things you can explore. But you need to.
Got it in that. Now, I know where I'm at. The hills are like this.
Yeah.
So I just took my bike out for the first time in a couple of years the other day. So I'm just like, it's really fascinating having just taken out my bike and now being like, oh, like that's I'm a big fan of walking, and I'll walk for miles in a day and just like,
Yeah.
and so for me personally, I'm like, how do I take my camera on my bike? Because I've never I'm like, oh, like, is it safe or how am I gonna do it?
Yeah. I use a backpack. I mean, because I want to have my bicycle when I'm taking photos. Otherwise, you could use panniers. I have a backpack and I have a rear frame which I strap the tripod to, and I can set up in under a minute. I'm practiced at doing it, but so yes, you put but again, I take a lot of I'm taking some pretty heavy professional gear. You don't really need to do that if you don't want to. Put a handlebar bag on the front of the thing. Get a really good mobile smartphones do wonderful. Tuck one in your jersey pocket. You don't need tripods and a pro DSLR and a selection of them.
Doesn't have the big cameras.
Yeah, no, you don't, and you don't need it. I mean, I do for what I'm doing, but if you want to just go out and explore, and see things and exercise your creativity. Slip a smartphone in the pocket. And if you want to set something up, those little gorilla pads or whatever they call those little, you
Yeah,
can
those
twist them
little
around.
just
Yeah, yeah. That,
it's like for me, it's like I've stopped carrying my big, my big cameras and big lenses. I carry my my Fuji, my small little X Pro,
yeah,
and and I'm like, all right, I'm good to go. But also like sometimes just like slip the smartphone in the pocket and then I'm free.
yeah. Well, yeah. There's yeah, absolutely. Um, I because of the hour, I shoot in really low light, and I like having a full frame camera. It works better for that. But otherwise, yeah, if I was going out in the middle of the day, or yeah, why why carry 20 pounds of gear when you can just slip a smartphone in your pocket? And some of the results. My wife and kids have smartphones. I feel really silly. I mean, they'll ask me to take a picture with their smartphone, and I don't know how to use it. I've got this Pro DSLR with every button you can imagine on it, and I can I can do that in the dark, and but I'm taking a picture of myself, and I'm trying to take a picture of them. It's but they come up with some lovely images. My daughter started her own Instagram little travel account, and she's taken a lot of stuff with her camera, and and I'll come up to her, Ellen, where'd you get that picture? I took it. And okay, and she's got a nice iPhone, and it does a really good job. So yeah,
There's also something I think in here about the slowing down that you're like going and you have kind of like a goal and have like I need to set it up and need to do that. That's also I think that adds the interest. Like there's some unknown destination in there. It sounds
yeah,
like
yes,
goal that's not necessarily there's the destination inside of like oh it's got to
yeah,
be way or like pre-vision and then some vision of what's there and working with it.
yes,
That's it sounds like that's part of your process.
absolutely. I mean, I go to bed at night thinking of where I'm going to go in the morning, and it will depend on very much depend on not just on the weather, but what the clouds are like. Because I spend enough time researching and scouting that I'll look out. Okay, there's going to be some lovely mist on the marsh this morning. Sometimes it's that fear of missing out. I think, okay, there's lovely mists on the marsh this morning, but I know the light is going to come over this hilltop over by Winchelsea, two different directions, and I have to make a decision. And then sometimes you get there and you think, that was it. Ah, yes, that's a picture of ice blink. It's right on the Arctic Circle, the Antarctic Circle.
So yeah,
Ice,
yeah.
ice blink is where you have the ice reflecting bright light up into the sky, and it's dark on the one side because there's open water. And yes, patriotic penguins. It's that's a vertical shot, so you can't quite see it's the Union Jack, but the penguins all look like they were being very patriotic at an old British base. And I saw them standing there at attention around the Union Jack, and I just couldn't resist. But yeah, that's at Port Lacroix. It's a restored British base from the 1940s in the Antarctic Peninsula.
Wow. Yeah, and then this one.
Yes, that's right on the Antarctic Circle. The black open water there and the black ice reflect light differently. And that's why you see the dark on one side and the bright white on the other.
Wow. So just different. They're just all reflecting. It's all reflecting light different.
Yes, yeah. The ocean doesn't reflect water up at all. It's just black, and then the pack ice reflects the light quite strongly.
Wow.
But yes, that was yep. There, that was on the. I lectured on some cruise ships going down to Antarctica some years ago in another incarnation. Um, it, I've been fortunate enough to travel very widely in it. I mean, South Pole, summit of Erebus, the volcano, the Antarctic ice shelf. I've been in the transantarctic mountains and did a bit of exploring on a yacht down there about 20 years ago, which was really interesting. We collected some specimens from the southernmost flowering plants at a wonderfully lyrical named island. It's called the Terra Firma Islands, which hardly anyone has ever been to. They were first people landed there in the 1930s, and hardly anyone's been there since. And we managed to get there. You can only get there on a yacht because there's too much shallows. I mean, they would ground a regular boat. And you can only get there if there's really clear ice here. And this summer, Antarctic summer of 2000 was clear. And we managed to sail all the way down and collected these plants for some scientists. It was it was an amazing feeling to be down there and doing that. It was one of the most I've been to some interesting places, but that was one of the most magical places.
How did you get involved in that project?
National Geographic, they've opened. I've been contributing to them in words and pictures for 24 years.
Wow.
And they opened a lot of. I've done some, been able to do some interesting things and go to a lot of interesting places thanks to my association with them.
How did you get involved with National Geographic?
It was a real passion. The funny thing is, it was cycling that led me into it. I was a 14-year-old kid in 1973 when the May issue of National Geographic arrived on our doorstep with a big story of the cycling boom that was going around America. As part of that story, they had a story about two couples who were cycling the Alaskan highway. And there it was in Kodachrome, my dream. I mean, I had imagined myself doing all this stuff on a bicycle, but I wondered, could you really do that? And suddenly I'm seeing people, they're cycling the Alaskan highway. They're planning to go to Argentina. And I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do someday. I'm going to shoot for National Geographic, and I'm going to ride bicycles places around. And funny the way the world works, the very first story for National Geographic some 20 odd years later after a career at Time magazine was a 10,000-mile bicycle journey around Australia. A 3-part series in the magazine, and it came out as a book later. And so my dream sort of came true. And as a result of that, I just kept contributing to them. And I've done stories on everything from whaling in Norway to cheetahs in the Serengeti to Pacific voyagers, Polynesian voyagers, Australia's monsoon, loads. One of the most exciting ones was a Portuguese shipwreck off the Namibian coast, the 16th century ship, which turned into quite a detective game to find out, because no one even knew the ship was there. And we managed to find out what the ship was, the captain's name. It sailed in 1533, and it had a cargo of gold and ivory, which they were going to buy spices. It was a wonderful story, a time capsule. And again, magical stories. And I've been lucky enough to do this kind of thing. I've had stories in America too. I mean, one very enjoyable story I did on the state of Nebraska. Now, you might think, well, it's a fascinating place. You spend 6 weeks, I mean, Geographic in those days, this was 20 years ago, they had really good budgets. And I spent like 6 weeks cruising around the state of Nebraska looking for interesting things. And by golly, I came away, I still have very fond memories of Nebraska. And, people tell me I say, oh, well, how boring is that? It's not boring at all. It's a fabulous place. I absolutely loved it. They opened up doors, and particularly back then, the editorial budgets were great, and what they wanted was excellence. They didn't, and if you needed more field time, you no field time. The thing was to make an excellent story. And so it was a wonderful, wonderful time and place to work for them. Um, it was magical.
So they changed their editorial budgets,
Yeah, like everything.
like everything.
Yeah.
The shift.
The fun time is over. But, I mean, it was fun, but it also worked because the stories were, they factored in time for serendipity. You know, you'd have a story plan, but they would factor in, extra time just to see what we don't know, what we don't even expect. And there was always something. You'd find something that you didn't imagine, didn't expect. And it made the story, and it was a nice time to do it. It was really good.
So you don't find that there's many places with budgets for serendipity time.
Not anymore. Now, serendipity's gone out the window. It's my own budget, which is spending my own time, is to go out on my bicycle. And I allow for serendipity there. But that's just me. It's everything's much more rigorously planned, and yeah, it's just the way the world seems to have turned. And it's not, I mean, I think all the magazines are like that. I mean, Time magazine, I've worked for them for a while, and they were wonderful to work with. Absolutely wonderful. I was back in the 80s, 90s working with them. And wonderful. But then they also would not as much as National Geographic, because they were a weekly, not a monthly with a long lead time. But yes, they would certainly allow us to spend a bit of extra time, just see what turned up. And
Wow.
yeah, those were good days.
So it sounds like the time looking for the serendipity, that's kind of like the most magical of it all. I know
Yes,
for me when I'm traveling, when I, just like going through India or like wherever, just like
India is
traveling
wonderful.
one time, just like letting serendipity happen. That's where I get the best shots, where I get the best stories, where I get the best
Yes,
people I've met and interesting.
yes, that's exactly it. It's isn't it funny? I'm sure you've noticed this too. When you go out focused on something, that's when things just don't work. When you just kind of relax, let things happen, open yourself, suddenly it, stuff just happens. And stuff that you didn't even imagine was going to happen. And it's better than what you thought might. And then you come back and I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of put on the dog a little bit. Yeah, well, I kind of, I knew this was, of course I did. No, luck had nothing to do with that. But, you make your own luck, and you just open yourself up and you find it and you recognize it. And as soon as you recognize it, just grab it with both hands. And yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think there's an element here that you're speaking about, and I'm kind of like how to describe the balance between that goal of like going out, you have this like idea in mind, but not stuck with it because you're also like having that balance with the serendipity. It sounds like you have such passion and like
yeah,
and historical like interest, but it's not necessarily you don't necessarily know that before you go out.
no, yeah, and but you have to have the flexibility. I mean, that picture I mentioned that you showed there was that pier, the
Yeah.
tiny little speck standing at the end of it, which I took the other day. Um,
Uh,
no,
um,
no, that when I was at the
oh yeah, yeah.
jetty in Bexhill. That was total serendipity. I had gone out expecting something entirely different. Yeah,
With
uh,
this
that
one.
one, yes. I'd
Okay.
expected something entirely different. I had gone out, and the thing I wanted to get just wasn't working. I packed up, and then I was just riding along and looking out at that jetty and thinking, wow, hey, why didn't I see that? And I wasn't that far from that. Why I didn't see it, and then you also have to be willing to pull over and stop. I mean, I was on my way home. I wanted breakfast. I was hungry, but you have to pull over and set up and And that was the shot that I came back from the day that I was really pleased with. Everything else I took, yeah, no. But it's the serendipity. And just, I say, it was a casual glance, looked at that and thought, I've never seen the water so still and the mist obscuring. It just worked. And I thought, a solitary figure out there with a little tail light glowing on the bike, that's perfect. And ran out there, set up the tripod really quickly. A very obliging fisherman let me have the jetty. You find people that, sometimes I've also learned that most people are pretty good. People are generally really good. We had so many people, they see me stop. Are you all right? I'm at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm out on the little road and I'm standing there on the road. Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm just setting up a camera. But people are generally pretty good.
Wow.
So
So you're going out at 3 in the morning.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Three, like 7, you're like, that's your like prime.
It is. At 3, I don't have to go out quite so early now, but in June I had to go out about 3 because it's depending where I wanted to go. Usually it's about an hour and a half away, long ride. And so, riding in these little lanes, hills, by starlight, lamplight, hour and a half to get where I want to get. And you want to be there before sunrise because you want to get there through the shifting light. Light changes, as you know. And so you don't want to be there 5 minutes. The light's not going to come back. So I ride out there, get there. That light there, and that when I was riding, that was there and gone in seconds. And so you have to be there, set up. And so I would go out at 3 o'clock in the morning, be there, and that was that one in particular. That was an hour and a half to get there, and I knew that the sun was going to come over at that particular time of year and just strike that cottage, that farmstead. And so I had that in mind. I knew what I wanted to be, where I needed to be, and got there about 20 minutes before sunrise. And then you sort of kind of kill time waiting for things to go. And I do practice runs, look at the angles, do my timings. Lots of work goes into that, and I come home with a shot. But that one shot will take hours to do, and nothing's more anticlimactic than when you've got all this stuff and you're really pleased with it, and all of a sudden you realize, oh God, it's a 2-hour ride home on hills. I'm hungry. I want coffee, but it ain't gonna happen for 2 more hours. And so you get back on the bike, and that's where you really start paying for it. You start thinking, why am I doing this? And you finally get home, and then the first thing you got to do is, before you get the coffee going, is download everything, recharge everything, get everything set up, and then you finally get breakfast.
Wow.
And
We only have about a minute and a half left.
okay, I'm sorry.
I know time has flown by. It's like so fascinating. We'll have to talk again. This is
Really enjoyed meeting you. I've loved your work. I've been looking over your stuff, and you do some you get some really cool stuff with the jazz stuff.
jazz and dancers and lately
Yeah.
it's and portrait.
I
Another time.
That's well, if you're ever over in this neck of the woods, I'd love to shout you a beer.
Will do.
Yeah.
I love. So I want to, before we wrap up, before we only have like 30 seconds left, I want to say thank you, Roff Smith. Make sure to follow him up here. I'm Aaron Jack. If you're not following me, follow me up here. This is all part of Artist to Artist, portrait of a photographer in a new way. As we're in quarantine, Roff is part of a show fields curation that I'm doing. That's on the 25th at 5 p.m. Make sure to be there. Thank you all so much for joining us. You can watch this later. You can watch the whole series. I'll be back at 2 p.m. on Aaron Jack Line Art with PXP Contemporary, and then I'll be back here 2 hours later, and then 2 hours after that. So I'm here all day. I'm here on Thursday. I'll be here on Friday. Amazing photographers, amazing people. I'm learning so much, and hopefully, yeah, we're just sharing some awesome knowledge. So thank you, Roff. Thank you.